Some places on Earth receive so much rainfall that the concept of a dry day is almost foreign to the people who live there. Imagine waking up every single morning to the sound of rain hammering against your roof, rivers swelling beyond their banks, and clouds so thick that sunlight feels like a distant memory. These are not temporary weather events or seasonal storms. These are places where the sky simply never stops giving. Across the globe, certain geographic locations sit at the intersection of ocean winds, towering mountain ranges, and powerful monsoon systems, creating conditions so wet that annual rainfall totals can exceed 10 times the global average. Today, we count down the top 10 wettest places ever recorded on Earth, from the remarkably drenched to the almost unbelievably soaked. Coming in at number 10 is Dibuncha, a small coastal settlement tucked into the southwestern corner of Cameroon in Central Africa. This location receives an average of 10,299 millimeters of rain per year, making it one of the wettest spots on the African continent. Dibuncha sits at the base of Mount Cameroon, which is the highest peak in West and Central Africa, rising over 4,000 meters above sea level. When moisture-laden air rolls in from the Atlantic Ocean, it slams directly into the mountain slopes and is forced upward. As the air rises, it cools rapidly, and that cooling causes the moisture to condense and fall as rain in extraordinary quantities. The surrounding landscape is a dense, lush tropical rainforest teeming with biodiversity. Local communities in this region have built their lives around the relentless wet season, constructing homes with steep-pitched roofs designed to shed water quickly and relying on the fertile, rain-soaked soil for agriculture. The region's ecosystems thrive under this constant moisture, supporting a remarkable variety of plant and animal species found nowhere else on Earth. At number 9, we travel to the middle of the Pacific Ocean to a remote highland area on the island of Maui in Hawaii, known as Big Bog. Sitting at an elevation of approximately 1,670 meters on the slopes of Haleakala volcano, Big Bog receives around 10,272 millimeters of rainfall annually. The mechanism here is similar to Dibuncha. Trade winds blowing in from the northeast carry warm, humid air across the Pacific, and when that air hits the volcanic slopes of Maui, it is forced upward and releases its moisture in torrential amounts. Big Bog is largely uninhabited and difficult to access, which has allowed its native Hawaiian bog ecosystem to remain relatively pristine. The area is home to rare native plants and birds that have adapted specifically to this waterlogged environment. While few humans live directly in Big Bog, the rainfall it generates feeds streams and watersheds that supply water to communities across Maui, making this remote, rain-soaked highland an essential resource for the island's population. Number 8 takes us to the South Island of New Zealand in the Crop River Valley, nestled within the Westland district near the Southern Alps. The Crop River area records approximately 11,686 millimeters of rain per year, and in a single year back in 1998, it recorded over 18,000 millimeters, one of the highest single-year totals ever measured in the Southern Hemisphere. The Southern Alps act as a massive barrier to the prevailing westerly winds that sweep across the Tasman Sea. When these moisture-heavy winds hit the mountains, they rise sharply, cool down, and dump extraordinary amounts of rain on the western slopes. The Crop River Valley itself is a wild, rugged landscape of dense temperate rainforest, rushing rivers, and dramatic waterfalls. Very few people live in this remote valley, but the rainfall feeds the glaciers and rivers that flow through some of New Zealand's most iconic national parks, sustaining ecosystems that have evolved over millions of years in near-constant wet conditions. And a deep cultural connection to the surrounding rainforest, which is among the most biodiverse in all of Africa, where the small village of San Antonio de Eureka sits on the southern tip of the island. This location receives roughly 10,450 millimeters of rainfall each year. Bioko Island is a volcanic island sitting in the Gulf of Guinea, and its southern end is exposed to the full force of the southwest monsoon winds that blow in from the Atlantic. The island's mountainous interior forces these winds upward, triggering intense and near-constant precipitation. The village of San Antonio de Eureka is one of the most isolated communities in all of Africa, accessible only by boat or a long trek through dense jungle. The people who live there have adapted entirely to life in the rain, with traditional building techniques, farming practices suited to waterlogged soils. Number 6 brings us back to Hawaii, this time to the island of Kauai and the legendary Mount Waialeale. Known for decades as one of the wettest spots on Earth, Mount Waialeale receives an average of 11,684 millimeters of rain per year. The mountain sits at the center of Kauai and acts as a natural funnel for the northeast trade winds that carry moisture from the Pacific. The summit is almost perpetually shrouded in clouds, and rainfall occurs on roughly 360 days out of every year. The name Waialeale in Hawaiian roughly translates to rippling water or overflowing water, a name that could not be more fitting. The mountain slopes feed numerous rivers and waterfalls that cascade down into Kauai's famous valleys, including the breathtaking Waimea Canyon. While the summit itself is inaccessible to most visitors, the rainfall it generates has shaped Kauai's entire landscape and supports one of the most ecologically rich environments in the Hawaiian island chain. At number 5, we arrive in the northeastern Indian state of Meghalaya and the town of Cherrapunji, locally known as Sohara. Cherrapunji receives approximately 11,777 millimeters of rain annually and was once considered the wettest place on Earth. It held that record for much of the 20th century. The town sits on the edge of a plateau overlooking the vast plains of Bangladesh, and when the Bay of Bengal monsoon sweeps northward each year, it collides with the Khasi Hills and releases enormous quantities of rain. What makes Cherrapunji particularly fascinating is the way its communities have adapted to the rainfall over centuries. The indigenous Khasi people developed a remarkable tradition of growing living root bridges by training the roots of rubber fig trees across rivers and streams. These bridges, some of which are hundreds of years old, become stronger with age and are perfectly suited to the wet, flood-prone environment. Cherrapunji's landscape is dramatic, with deep gorges, roaring waterfalls, and a lush green canopy stretching as far as the eye can see. Number 4 is Tutunendo, a small town in the Choco department of Colombia on the Pacific coast of South America. Tutunendo receives approximately 11,770 millimeters of rain per year and has at various points held the record for the highest annual rainfall total ever measured. The Choco region is one of the wettest and most biodiverse places on the planet. Warm, humid air from the Pacific Ocean is pushed inland and forced upward by the western slopes of the Andes Mountains, releasing rainfall in staggering quantities. The surrounding Choco rainforest is a global biodiversity hotspot, home to thousands of plant species, hundreds of bird species, and countless other animals. The communities of Tutunendo and the broader Choco region are predominantly Afro-Colombian and indigenous, and their cultures, livelihoods, and traditions are deeply intertwined with the rainforests and the rivers that the relentless rainfall sustains. Just ahead of Tutunendo at number 3 is another Colombian town in the Choco region, Yoro. Yoro receives approximately 13,300 millimeters of rain per year, making it one of the top 3 wettest places on Earth. The same geographic forces that drench Tutunendo are at work here, with Pacific moisture being driven into the Andes and released in extraordinary volumes. Yoro sits in a river valley surrounded by dense jungle, and flooding is a regular part of life for its residents. Local communities have developed practical and cultural strategies for living with the water, including elevated homes, traditional canoe-based transportation, and agricultural systems designed to function in perpetually saturated soils. The biodiversity of the surrounding forest is extraordinary, and the rivers fed by this rainfall are vital arteries for both wildlife and human communities throughout the region. At number 2, we return to Meghalaya, India, and the village of Mawsynram, located just a short distance from Cherrapunji. Mawsynram receives approximately 11,872 millimeters of rain per year, and currently holds the Guinness World Record as the wettest inhabited place on Earth. Like Cherrapunji, Mawsynram sits on the southern edge of the Khasi Hills Plateau, perfectly positioned to intercept the full force of the Bay of Bengal monsoon. The rainfall here is so intense during the monsoon season that locals traditionally stuff grass into the walls of their homes to muffle the deafening sound of rain on their rooftops. The village is surrounded by terraced fields, dense forests, and rivers that swell dramatically during the wet season. Despite the challenges of living in such a wet environment, the people of Mawsynram have built a resilient community that has thrived for generations in one of the most rain-soaked corners of the world, viewing the monsoon not as a hardship but as the very foundation of their existence, which encompasses both Mawsynram and Cherrapunji and the surrounding highland terrain. Weather stations across this region have recorded some of the most extreme rainfall totals in human history. In 1861, Cherrapunji recorded over 22,860 millimeters of rain in a single year, a figure that remains one of the highest annual totals ever documented. The geography of the Khasi Hills creates a near-perfect rainfall trap. The hills form a curved bowl-like escarpment that faces directly south toward the Bay of Bengal. When the summer monsoon arrives, it funnels directly into this natural bowl, rises rapidly, and releases its moisture in volumes that are almost incomprehensible. The result is a landscape of extraordinary beauty and ecological richness, with waterfalls, sacred forests, and living root bridges. From the volcanic slopes of Hawaii to the monsoon-drenched hills of northeastern India, these 10 places remind us that rainfall is not just weather. It is a force that shapes landscapes, builds ecosystems, and defines entire ways of life. The communities that call these places home have not simply survived extreme rainfall. They have built cultures, traditions, and livelihoods that are inseparable from the water that falls around them every single day. The forests nourished by this rain are among the most biodiverse on the planet, and the rivers they feed sustain millions of people far beyond the boundaries of these wet zones. Extreme rainfall is both a challenge and a gift, and the places on this list are living proof of what happens when nature operates at its most powerful and most generous. Which of these places surprised you the most?